of parallel wholesale simulation. Professor Mitra, over to you.
Thank you. So I will start. Give me a minute. I will set up.
Professor Mitra, can you just wait for 5 minutes so that all the participants join?
Okay, sure, no problem. I can wait.
Yes, I think we are good to start. Welcome, Professor Mitra.
Okay, thank you. Can you able to see my presentation?
Yeah, we are able to see the presentation.
Okay, thank you. So let us start. I believe given the content or the title of this particular workshop, so I can expect that most of you are aware about this cell biology, at least what is a cell, etc. Now, if you have done some sort of, say, bioinformatics, then also you are probably aware about the fact that there is some software which takes care of the dynamic simulation of a biomolecule. That is called as the molecular dynamics, in short MD. And started at the Harvard University with the force field charm. Several molecular dynamics software exist, say GROMACS, AMBER, CHARM, and different variations of them also exist. With the advent of the high performance computing or the parallel computers, the initial implementation of those molecular dynamics simulation software has also been modified to work on several computers or in a cluster, and nowadays the GPU based molecular dynamics simulation softwares are also available. One is also there with us in installed in the Param Shakti, and I believe my colleague Professor Anupam will talk on this particular topic on tomorrow. Now the question is, although the molecular dynamics software is more or less matured, and nowadays only few groups are working on the development of the force field, but mostly people are using that one. On the other hand, at the cell level, no dynamic simulation software exists. In 2012, by one publication at the Cell Journal, one group from Stanford University mentioned that it is possible to write or develop software for simulating whole cell. Separately, few people from the computer science background also tried, and they did some progress on that one. But during that time, GPU was not available this much. Now GPU is available, and the question is it possible to develop that simulation software for the whole cell or not? Now in this talk, actually, I will show you that by developing two different algorithms, they are connected. The first algorithm will tell, based upon one network-based analysis, what kind of clusters are good enough for your simulation. Although we started the discussion on the high performance clusters, but I'd like to mention that that basically, if you are given with a very high number of computing nodes, that doesn't guarantee that your job will be finished quickly. It is not possible. There are some restrictions, there are some rules. There is one equation based upon Amdahl's, which says that it is not only the computers, but the kind of algorithm which is implemented is also responsible for the parallel processing. Okay, that's why at the first we will target on identifying that what kind of computing nodes will be good enough for simulating the whole cell. Next, assuming one very simplest force field, we will simulate the whole cell using the high performance clusters. So this is the diagram of a cell. I borrowed it from one publication in 2001. It mostly indicates a number of functions which goes on inside a cell. And that is also one of the primary objective to go for developing a software for simulating the whole cell. Because once the whole cell simulation will be there, then based upon that whole cell simulation, it might be possible that we can able to understand a number of molecular mechanisms. We can able to discover a number of new molecular mechanisms, and that way it will be easy for us to answer a lot of problems or issues inside the cell. Okay. In order to do that one, what we tried that we consider a simple version of a cell, and we focus on gene and proteins only. I understand that if I assume the existence of a cell, then it includes a lot of things. But for our purpose, we are starting with the gene and protein because majority of the solid body inside the cell is occupied by this only. And also, when we will finish our discussion, then you will understand that if we include other bodies along with the gene and the protein, then also the overall software or the structure of the program will not change, only the dimension of the problem will change. So we started to draw one network or the graph based upon the gene and the protein. So for that, we took help of the KEGG database, KEGG. So the reference is given at the bottom. That is most widely used database in order to know the gene interaction. And based upon that gene interaction, we convert a protein interaction network. Definitely, gene will translate to a number of proteins. We are aware about that fact. And also we took help of a number of databases like UniProt, NCBI, where we find ID mapping between gene and protein. And mostly using that ID mapping, we are converting the genes to the protein, and the interactions are also copied from there. Of course, we are assuming the existence of a one-to-one correspondence between the gene and protein. That is again an assumption, but I think with that we can work. Now, when we identify that interaction from gene, and next I will talk about the protein also, then at the initial stage, what we did, we converted the gene to the corresponding protein, and we construct one graph. Now, a graph consists of two components. It is generally written as G, V, and E. G is basically the graph. V indicates vertex or node. Vertex or node. And E indicates edge. E indicates edge. Edge is a line. It can be a straight line or curved line between two vertices or nodes. That way you can also consider that edge is kind of a pair of nodes or pair of vertices. Now in this diagram, which indicates that A, B, C, D, E, this is just a pictorial representation. You can consider that there are 4 genes, and that is translated to protein A, B, C, D, E. And as per that KEGG database, there is an interaction between the protein A and B and correspondingly to the gene level also. Because of the interaction of A and B, there is an edge. So this line. Because of the interaction between B and C, there is an edge. Because of the interaction between A and D, there is an edge. Because of the interaction, there is an edge A to D. Because of the interaction, there is an edge between D to E. The one above each of the edges indicates that there is a direct edge, or the edge weight is 1, indicating that A interacts with B, B interacts with C, A interacts with D, like that. Now, our assumption is that, and you will also agree with us, that in order to interact, two genes or corresponding proteins must come closer to each other. So, at some time during the interaction, physically they will be in contact with each other. That's why the age indicates that they are basically near to each other. Now, in the intermediate graph, if you look, then A to B, there is a direct edge, which means A interacts with B, and the edge weight is 1. Now B interacts with C, that's why its edge weight is 1 again. Now we can assume with some limitations that since A interact with B and hence they needs to come closer with each other, and B interacts with C and hence they needs to come closer to each other for the interaction purposes, then A and C may not be far away from each other. They can also be closer with each other. Okay, so if they are closer with each other, then I am giving an edge, but in this case I am not sure, I am not 100% certain that A will be closer to C. There is a possibility. That's why that possibility or the probability is encoded by the fact that how far they are. And regarding that how far they are, I am computing that probability by counting the number of edges I have to hop between A and C. Okay. Now you see that how many paths are there to reach to C from A? One path is A to B to C, and two edges are connected. That's why I am getting 1 by 2, that is 0.5. Another possibility is that A to D, D to B, B to C. So 3 edges are there. So 1 by 3, that is 0.33. For each one of them, there are some dotted lines. Now, if multiple dotted lines are there, then I will pick only one line and with the higher probability. That's why it translates to 0.5, and now it is the solid line. Similar to that, other edges are also constructed. Now, safely I can say that the number which is written on the lines, which I am calling as an edge, is nothing but the probability of being physically in contact with each other. One indicates with 100% probability because they needs to interact. 0.5 indicates with half probability or 50% probability that they will be in contact with each other. Okay. So from the KEGG, I am computing one such graph. I am calling that as a gene pathway graph, or in short GPG. For the protein-protein interactions, I am computing such graphs, and I am calling that as a PPI, protein-protein interaction graph. Now we consider 4 different databases for this purpose. All are experimental databases. It houses the idea of the protein and their interaction. They are database of interacting protein, DIP, INTACT, BioGrid, and MINT. For each one of them, I am constructing one separate PPI. And then I am combining all of them in order to get one protein interactome. So this is my protein interaction network for Escherichia coli, or in short E. coli, that you can see. Now from my construction, that GPG or gene pathway graph, PPI for MINT, for BioGrid, for intact, for DIP, I am getting different networks. So this is one, this is one, this is one, this is one. So these four are protein interaction network, and this is gene interaction network, GPG, gene pathway. Taking the union of all those graphs, I am getting PLG. I am calling that as a protein locality graph, which says that which proteins will be physically local with each other. This is the flow diagram as of now, what we have discussed in order to generate the protein locality graph. Interestingly, we identified that for Escherichia coli, or in short E. coli, there are several components. Means this is one component, this is one component, this is one component. Component indicates that one graph from where I cannot reach to another graph, means there is no edge, direct or indirect. So they are separate entities kind of. Analyzing that one, we understand that there is one largest connected component which consists of 3611 number of proteins, whereas about 4000 proteins are there for E. coli. We didn't get all them, but here. One component is there with 8 proteins, one component is there with 7 proteins, and 66 components are there with only single protein. Now, what this graph will signify? As per our assumption and the construction of this graph, of this PLG, protein locality graph, we understand that there is an edge only if two proteins are physically in contact with each other. Direct edge. Indirect edge may be possible if they are not directly but indirectly connected. Of course, here we are giving one threshold that if there are more than 3 edges, indirect edges, then we are not considering that as say physically local proteins. Now, based upon the construction, you can safely assume that if this is one component where there is no edge from this part to any other part, then there is probably no interaction with the other components like this. So, borrowing the concept of pre-launch session, if we place this particular component for simulation in one computing node or in one computer, then there is no requirement of message passing because there is no interaction. So there is no requirement of the message passing. So I can say that they are mutually independent of each other and when they will simulate. So you see, we are going somewhere. We are trying to understand that given a cell, how can I analyze that cell in order to know that how many such independent components are there, and in each component, how many such proteins are there as of now. But additionally, we can add more interaction information and we can keep on extending that one. Right? Once the analysis is done, probably we are trying to understand that what kind of cluster we need. Now, by looking at this, you understand that if I assign one computer for this large cluster consists of 3611 number of proteins, then they will run slowly compared to other clusters, other nodes, where say there is only one protein or say 8 proteins or say 7 proteins like that. So my suggestion is that probably you are aware that in GPU architecture, there are an array of processors. Why don't we assign one GPU processor for this node and other CPU processors for these particular nodes? So we are now in a position to propose that for simulating wholesale, we need CPU GPU cluster. If it is CPU cluster, then with the speed with which these nodes will be in execution and with the speed with which this node will be in execution is completely different. You look at the granularity, the number of proteins contains in it. Based upon that one, you can easily understand that hypothesis. So we are proposing for some GPU CPU cluster. Next, the question comes that how do you make sure that indeed this clustering is functionally independent? Functionally independent means I constructed based upon the interaction, and I am assuming that interaction is nothing but a function. In order to perform that function, two proteins needs to come closer with each other. What is the guarantee that you are not excluding some other function for which they needs to come closer with each other? If they need, then there is an exchange of information. So you have to pass some message in the context of MPI. If it is even GPU, CPU, then there will be some communication between CPU and GPU. Of course, I cannot rule out the communication completely in terms of the parallel programming. I cannot say that it is embarrassingly parallel. The keyword embarrassingly parallel indicates that probably throughout the simulation, there is no need of exchange of information, perhaps at the beginning or at the end. That is not mostly counted because at the beginning, definitely you have to send some information, one message needs to pass. At the end, you have to accumulate all the information, so one message needs to pass. In order to make sure, we have done some analysis of the PLG. And also we try to understand, is this the property of E. coli only, or it is true for other organisms also? So the same algorithm we executed for other organisms. So if you look at the x-axis, it is the organisms, and along the y-axis, it is the clustering coefficient. So we have done our analysis on several organisms like branded bat, chicken, collared flycatcher, rock pigeon, Chinese alligator, American alligator, African cloud frog, Western clued frog, etc. etc. So many things, zebrafish, Chinese hamster, apple, etc. And we find a trend which indicates that no, this is kind of the property where there are multiple components. They are not connected with each other, and there may be large components, small components, etc. So our hypothesis is that in order to simulate a wholesale, you need CPU GPU cluster is established. Then we further cluster each component using the Markov cluster algorithm, which is an unsupervised learning method and works well on the graph. After that clustering, using that Markov cluster algorithm, we got a number of further clusters. So that clusters are here. Multi-node clusters are 122, single node clusters are 66. While running this MCL or Markov cluster algorithm, our intention is that we should not increase the single node cluster, because that is against the parallel execution. Single node cluster means I need one more CPU for the assignment of that node or the protein for the simulation. So I will avoid that one. Accordingly, the inflection parameter for the Markov cluster algorithm is decided. So here is an analysis which says that I have how many number of proteins are plotted along the x-axis and number of clusters along the y-axis. Now 1693 number of proteins are there in one cluster, 771 number of proteins in another cluster, 585 in another, 125 in another, 23, 16, 13. Now by looking at this, what you can consider, okay, probably these 4 will be assigned to some GPU, rest may be executed in CPU. Okay. We further validate that one through gene ontology based verification. For that purpose, we used one existing web service, that is Frela. It is a web tool for semantic and functional similarity computation. And Frela suggests that this is the functional similarity matrix as output from the Frela. So 3 FSMs are constructed corresponding to BP, biological process, molecular function MF, and cellular component CC. These 3 are different sections of the gene ontology GEO. So for them, we have constructed 3 such FSM. And our analysis indicates that for 430 PLG proteins, in total 18 cluster, no FS value exists in Frela, of which 265 proteins GEO hierarchies are absent in the GEO database. By excluding these 18 from 122 number of clusters as output from the MCL, Markov cluster algorithm, it has reduced to 104. Now it is with the higher probability for 2 interacting proteins to be involved in the same biological process or to be localized in the same cellular compartment. And that is what is required. Why? If we can put them together, then there is no need of sending the message. And from our pre-launch session, we understand that message passing, synchronization, all are clearly overhead on top of the computation, which cannot be avoided in distributed or in computation where separate nodes are there. There is another programming model which is called as the shared memory programming, where memory can be shared by all the processors. In that case, it is not a problem. But then the limit is there on the memory. Okay. So here is the overall summary of the result based upon gene ontology verification. You look at this A, 89% proteins that we have considered is supported by GEO. That's a very good number. Now, if we look at the coverage of PLG proteins and coverage of cluster, then we find that only 14% of the clusters are not functionally related, and only 3% of the PLG proteins are not functionally related. The rest are all supported by the gene ontology also. So which means the way we have clustered and did the analysis is good. We can work with that one, and compared to data-based analysis or data dependency analysis for parallel programming, we can use this as an alternative to understand how to partition my proteins for the computation, so that interaction or message passing is limited. So after the geo verification of the cluster at this stage, now it's time to go for high performance wholesale simulation. But you know, if I go for high performance wholesale simulation, then this cell needs to be partitioned physically, and each partition will be given to one node, as you can see here. So this is given to, say, one computing node, this is to another computing node, this is to another computing node. Like that way, I am giving each component. And my ultimate intention is that there is less number of communication among the nodes. So our motivation is modeling and simulating the whole cell, which are both time-consuming processes. Mathematical calculation predict the simulation of the whole cell cycle of E. coli on Kepler cluster with 196 CPUs would need about 24 days. See. Now, if we can do something in the implementation or in the force field or both, then it will be great. Otherwise, for one simulation of E. coli, it takes about 24 days in Kepler cluster, 196 CPUs. That's huge. For this, first obstacle is the unavailability of the good quality mathematical model. Next is the efficient yet accurate implementation of the model. Of course, at the time, little knowledge on high performance computing systems was known. At that time means when? So this was published in 2001, about 20 years back. Now, new high performance has come. So to achieve that one, first question we asked that, can we decompose the problem of wholesale modeling and simulation into subcells, partition them? Subcell modeling and simulation, so that we can properly utilize the existing HPC architecture. So this HPC architecture is high performance computing architecture. The answer is yes. As we demonstrated that CPU GPU architecture may be good for this purpose. Now, after the geo-based verification of cluster in this flow diagram, we identify some spatial constraints and we perform principal coordinate analysis, in short PCOA, in order to physically locate them into the cell. Try to understand the problem. This is a cell. Separately, I identified the proteins, I analyzed their interactions. Now I got some components. Where those components will go? Inside this cell. I am trying to simulate this cell. So I need to physically place this component inside this. And after the placing, probably I have to draw some boundary lines among those clusters. And that is nothing but dividing the cell into subcells. That was the question I asked in the last slide here. Decompose the problem of wholesale modeling and simulation into subcell. Divide that one. Cell is there. I identified the proteins, their interactions. Now I need to physically place them here so that I can divide. You go back again. So that I can divide this whole cell, I can divide into these parts. This is one part. This is another part. Each background color indicates one part. And small ball-like thing indicates that it is a cartoon representation, of course, indicates the proteins which will move during the simulation. And I need to support that. After physical placement, we performed a computational cell division based upon Delaunay triangulation, or inverse of it, Voronoi cells has been identified in 3D. Now the Voronoi cell ensures that between two physical locations, one bisection will be done in all the three directions, all the three dimensions. So equally, it will divide the space which are remaining, and I need to have one data structure in order to store that information. Of course, the answer is yes, we can simulate. So that data structure, I'm showing you that, is called as the cellular dictionary. Okay, in that data structure, after using 3D Voronoi cell, I decompose the whole cell into small parts, and each part is now stored in some data structure. I call that as a cellular dictionary. Cellular dictionary will help me to access each of the cells in almost constant time using the hashing facility. Okay, now going back, which was remaining. So once we will do the computational cell division and store that information here, the coordinate vertices of the Voronoi cell, the seed location, boundary information initially. After that, further information may come. And this subcell ID 1, 2, 3, 4 is kind of an index which I can hash. Now you know that if you go for hashing, then in constant time you can access. In constant time you can access the value, and it is important. In constant time, if I can access, then time requirement will be very less. Now, if I ask the question, can we decompose the problem of whole cell modeling and simulation into subcell modeling and simulation? Then the answer is yes. And that answer is starting from here. Identify spatial constraints, principal coordinate analysis, physical placement of clusters, then 3D Voronoi diagram, then Voronoi simulation of subcells, and representing that one in some cellular data structure, in short CD. Yes, we can indeed. It is a parallel problem. Next, when we go for the simulation, I agree with you that the cell dimension is not mostly in regular. But you know, if I go for some simulation, I have to assume that it is of some regular cell. Say either sphere or cuboid or some 3D cell. Again, we have to assume, and our assumption is that volume is 1.3 micrometer cube, length 2 micrometer, diameter 1 micrometer. Estimated depth around is 0.65 micrometer, and length with depth ratio is 40, 20, 30. This is the overall flow diagram of our whole cell simulation. I am not going into details. If you are interested, we can talk later. Now, this cell description that I have shown you will be mapped to something like this. Here you see that there are some small cubes. Inside the cube, there are some proteins. Each protein is nothing inside a cell. Each protein is one particular connected component, and they are disconnected from the other. Okay. Simulation I will show you. I have one video, but before that, little bit about the protein movements. We used Brownian dynamics. In short, BD reduces dimensionality of the problem, and the simulation is initialization, computing the forces, identifying the positions using velocity Hartlett algorithm similar to molecular dynamics simulation, increment simulation time by unit time step delta t, and keep on looping as long as you want the simulation. I know that here we are making some simplistic assumption by considering some Newtonian mechanics, but that is fine. It is only for the testing purposes, and rest of the simulations or algorithms remain same. Now, if you remove this part, if you replace this part, then you will get another simulation. But overall, the architecture, the algorithm doesn't change. While I am considering some movement, then I cannot bypass one thing, that is the collision. So when two particles will be in movement, of course, you can understand by this time that it is kind of a many body problem. When they will move, then they will make some collisions. The collision can be elastic or inelastic. So elastic means that the momentum will be preserved. Inelastic means that momentum may not be preserved. Mostly will not be preserved. Now the integration algorithm that we have used, borrowed from the molecular dynamics simulation, velocity Varlet, that doesn't include this collision model because it is not required. If you visualize your molecular dynamics, then you see that so it is moving, but as such there is no such different collision models are required. Okay, so it is not needed. So this is the cellular dictionary I discussed, and a detail of what kind of feature you can store and what will be the memory requirement that is mentioned here. So it may vary based upon different feature. You can add more, it is up to you. But it will give an estimate of how much memory is required, even if when you know that how many protein molecules are there. We implemented this using CUDA C++ programming language. So this is GPU based programming. And as an architecture, we have used NVIDIA Tesla K40C GPU accelerator consisting of 2880 CUDA cores or computing units. This is the processor specifications. Trajectory is saved as process monitor log file PML. And then probably you are aware there is one visualization software, PyMol. VMD is another visualization software. Tasmol is another. Chimera is another. So we use this PyMol for the visualization purpose. So total 1000 number of steps has been performed, and we consider inelastic collision between the molecules. I will show you the video, but before that, as I promised before the pre-lunch session, that communication time is an overhead on top of the computation time. So whenever you are dealing with some parallel implementation, there is an overhead for that parallel implementation, whatever it may be. I mean that whatever programming model you are using, shared memory, distributed memory, CUDA, so it will be an overhead. How much will be the overhead, that varies. Also that depends upon your implementation skill, program analysis skill, etc. Now in this case, along the x-axis, the number of core you can consider as a node or a unit of computing resource. Along the y-axis, it is the time in seconds are plotted. Now you see that blue color indicates the computation time, red indicates communication time. When I am using only one single core, then this is the total amount of time requirement, and you see carefully on top of blue there is no red. There is no communication required. It is only one node. The moment I incorporated one more node, then little red started to appear. For red is much more. But you see that when I incorporated one more node, that is number of core is 2 computing resources, then the total time requirement has increased heavily. So which means that my implementation is not good, or the program is not running efficiently on 2 nodes. When I incorporated 4, then overall time requirement has reduced, but compared to node 2 core, in 4 core, red portion has become more prominent. When I incorporated 8 cores, the red portion is almost same as the 4 core, but it reduces the overall time requirement. When I incorporated 16, then you see that communication time has increased, but overall time requirement has reduced. And I am interested about the overall time requirement. Then I introduced 32 core, 64 core, and after some time, that sometime is my 64 core, I see that there is no further improvement. Even when I give the all nodes, I had 2,880 nodes, I gave all of them. Still, there are no improvement. Right? That is what I mentioned, that Amstel's law also says that it doesn't matter how many computing nodes or resources are given to you. It is your responsibility to analyze the problem and identify as much parallel segment as possible and parallelize that part. Otherwise, overall speed up you cannot achieve. Okay. Now I am in a position to where I can show you that video. A moment. I'm closing this. So first, let me show you that. First, let me show you the serial. Do you able to see the video? You see that in this queue, there are some fixed spheres, those are colored red, and golden color spheres are moving around. Now, given all those molecules and simulating that one in one desktop computer is time consuming. Okay, so that's why what we have proposed, that divide that one into small parts and then distribute the workload. Let me show you that particular video. Now, do you able to see this one? Please look carefully. So each queue is given to one node, and you can see that they are simulating in parallel. Okay, and they are also confined to their own cell, which means that I am handling the collision at the boundary. And if I wish to allow the movement further, then I can do that one. So it is the choice. Okay. Now coming back to my presentation, we are almost at the end. Okay, so these two work is already published in two journals. One is Bioinformatics in 2019, and another is Journal of Chemical Information and Modeling in this year itself. So both are the work of my PhD student, Barnali Das. She submitted the thesis, and this is also accepted, awaiting the defense. And also with Barnali, there was one dual degree student from our computer science department, Abhijit Rajendra Patil, whose name is also here. So these two are really very good journal, Bioinformatics and Journal of Chemical Information and Modeling. And I really acknowledge the work of Bornali and Abhijit. Bornali was financially supported by the DST, Government of India. She was an Inspire Fellow. And my work is also supported by the funding from the India Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. And if you need the further information, this is my homepage. You will get the email address also from there. So you can feel free to contact me if you need further information. Thank you very much. If you have any question, I'll be happy to take that. Yes, Kaustav.
Good afternoon, sir. This is Kaustubh Shetty. I'm sorry for my lagging voice. This was a really good session. The question I wanted to ask was from the slide where you were discussing course and the like results were discussed with respect to the course. So you mentioned that there was a communication overhead and in the later part of the graph where there were more than 32 cores. But you also mentioned that one has to be cautious of a number of how much result is going on a specific number of cores. Like we were able to see that on 2 cores there was a lot of we can see there is a rise from जो फर्स्ट कोर का रिजल्ट था और जो सेकंड कोर का रिजल्ट था उसमें एक बहुत सिग्निफिकेंट राइज था जबकि 2 कोर्स पे वो कम होना चाहिए. सो इज दिस द वे यू आर चेकिंग योर आउटपुट्स like comparing the results and communication time overheads with increasing number of nodes, or was there something else which you were using to check that is the computation going right or not?
Okay, Kaustav, thank you for your question. That is a indeed very good question. So Kaustav, when we are looking at the result, so result has two different components. Okay, one is that correctness of the result and another is the efficiency of the result. Now the plot I have shown you is talking about the efficiency of the result. How efficient is that? Okay, so efficiency will be calculated or estimated in terms of the amount of time it will take. Now if there is one single node and then the time requirement is high, that you can see. If there are two nodes, it indicates that time requirement is further high. If 4, then it reduced. If 8, then it reduced that way. Because I am proposing that for wholesale simulation, you need to use CPU GPU clusters or high performance computing facility. Single node, single core is not good enough. So to justify that one and to demonstrate that indeed if you use more cores, then irrespective of the overhead due to parallel implementation, the overall time requirement, computation as well as the communication will be reduced. This plot or result is required. Now another result is, which is the correctness of the simulation, that will tell that whether your simulation is correct or not. So that is a separate issue. I didn't discuss that one in this presentation. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir. I had one more question, but if the organizers allow me, then on.
No, fine. You go ahead.
Yes, sir. So sir, the second thing which you mentioned. So are these results based on the output of Slurm match, like the Slurm log, like the log which you mentioned? Was that using Slurm or something other, sir? Because I'm currently finding a lot of stagnation in how to exactly.
It's fine. Yeah, Slurm is one such thing that you can use, but I believe Bornali didn't use Slurm. So she used only the log, that PML that I have mentioned to you.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Process monitor log file. Okay,
yes.
But Slurm you can use. So recently yes. that is gaining some more importance. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Pardon,
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir.
afternoon.
Sir, can I get the hello, sir?
Yeah,
Sir, can I get the recordings of this workshop?
it is being recorded, and you can get that one in the in here itself. It is being recorded. You see that one red button is appearing on top left corner. It is being recorded.
Means in the email, means email can be, I can get email. Means I will get email.
Okay, regarding the email, I will talk to others and I will make it available. But it is being recorded. Okay. Anything else?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Rajiv.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
So, sir, parallelism or HPC is, sir.
Yeah, tell me.
Sir, in parallelism, if you add parallel and the distributed, can we get, sir, good result? If you only applying parallelism, so we get some result. If you add some distributed processing, so for the large competition, so will you get a better result or something?
No, that depends. So how do you differentiate between parallel and distributed?
So parallelism means parallelism one a task is uh, divided into several subtasks. So concurrently
Then
run.
you
So
assign each subtask to each system which are distributed.
yes,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Hmm.
So parallelism. So if we did the same task will be distributed over the in a communication network over a large
Yes.
computers
It can be
total
distributed.
computers.
Yes.
So I hope it will be much more better or something parallel with distributed processing.
Yeah, that is possible. That is possible. So you analyze the problem and you can do that one.
Okay, fine, sir. Class, this is more informative. This genomics class, I saw graph theory will helpful for finding path and modeling also best. So that is I hope it will be helpful for the further research. So it
Okay,
is
thank you.
very nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Rajiv?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for this nice presentation, and this is really a good piece of work. So I have small question about the small beads which you considered as individual protein. So do you also undertake the periodic boundary condition for them?
Yes. So in our implementation, boundary conditions are there, but as you understand, Rajiv, that we are developing the algorithm and implementing.
Yeah.
So currently, we do not have as such biology to support it. But I probably have shown you I gave you the pointer where you can modify our algorithm in order to incorporate your biological or domain knowledge.
Yeah, right. And then in future, do you also plan to see the movements of one bead from one cell to another cell, like the communication within different clusters that you incorporated as a single cell model?
Okay, first thing is that Rajiv, so we are not yet finalized or finished this only one cell simulation. We are still working on that one.
Yeah.
And after that one, we are still working on this. But after that one, although you mentioned that one, but if you think, I believe you will also understand that intercell communication is not much required. If you only consider the interaction simulation of the whole cell and
Yes.
incorporate the environment information, then that will also include that intercell communication, isn't it?
Yes.
Because directly a cell cannot communicate to other cell, through environment it will communicate. And if I assume that it is putting some stimulus inside in the environment, and then another cell how it reacts with that stimulation, then that is nothing but simulating the whole cell, considering its environment
Yeah.
And considering all the external input it is getting from the environment, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So then it will also add lot more information like the
Definitely. We
surroundings
will
and
work for that. We will include that one. But what you are telling is, we will not work on that one, and I believe that is also not required.
okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Next.
Good afternoon, sir. This is
Good afternoon.
Pornushree. Thank you for your talk. I have a small question that as you mentioned that the whole simulation was developed mainly on the basis that two proteins are interacting with close vicinity, right? So is there any simulation has been performed where they have interacted through, I mean, in different molecules? Because what happens in reality that two proteins can interact through some signaling molecules and like this. So is there any software or simulation that has been developed where this has been considered?
No, in that case, say you try to understand and visualize the situation. When you said that two proteins are interacting through some signaling, right? So what is that signal? That signal itself is also an interaction between two protein molecules, right?
No,
Now
something
you
other than protein molecules, other signals or small ligand molecules
okay.
can also be
Let
happening.
me rephrase it, like interacting between two biomolecules.
Hmm?
That is the signal.
Yes.
Now A is interacting with B. A, B both are biomolecules. Okay, and because of that one, another interaction happens as per you. Now you see what we included in our graph construction, that directly if they do not interact, but indirectly, like A is interacting with B and B is interacting with C. Now if I consider because of the interaction of A and B, some signal has generated, and because of that, say B is interacting with C, then we are giving one indirect edge dotted line and putting a probability half. So we are also considering that one in our indirect way.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
But at the same time, I would like to mention that if we go for too much such indirection, the case or condition you are talking about is occur very rare number or very less in number. Now, if we incorporate too much such exceptional cases, then instead of the signal, we will incorporate a lot of noises in our network. So we wish to avoid that one also. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So anybody else has any question? Okay. So if nobody has any question, then
Thank you. No, there